Hey guys, in today's video, I want to share with you this delicious, soft, and moist gluten-free pumpkin scone recipe that you are not going to want to miss out on. So first thing we're going to do is start with sifting our flour. Here I'm using 1 3/4 cups plus 1 tablespoon of cup for cup multi-purpose flour. And to that we're going to add 1/4 cup of granulated white sugar. One reason I love scones is because it's just a minimal amount of sugar, but it still creates something sweet and just so delicious. So next we're going to add our salt, baking powder, and ground cinnamon and ground pumpkin pie spice. I like to do a mix of pumpkin pie spice and cinnamon because sometimes there could just be too much pumpkin flavor going on. So I like to split the two just to break it up. So you're going to sift all your flour through, and then you're going to want to grate 1 stick of frozen butter. Having your butter frozen prior to grating is so important. One, it's going to make sure that you actually are able to grate the butter, and then the purpose of frozen butter in the batter is so that when it is baking, you get little pockets of flaky deliciousness, and that's essentially what makes scones scones. So once you have done sifted your butter and you've sifted your flour and grated your butter, you're going to work everything through with a spoon, and then you could ultimately use your hands just to break it up. You want kind of like a coarse sand-like texture in your dough. You don't want to overwork it and melt all the butter, but you just want that nice coarse sandy texture. So once that is complete, we're going to set this aside and move on to our wet ingredients. So here we're going to start with our pumpkin puree. I'm using 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree, and then we're going to use 1/2 and 1/2. I have 2 tablespoons of 1/2 and 1/2. And then next we're going to add 1 egg. I'm using a large egg here. And then we're going to add just a splash of vanilla, as much or as little as you prefer. It's just going to enhance all the flavors overall and just bring a really nice balance to the scones. So we're going to mix all of these wet ingredients together until you get a consistency that looks kind of like such. And then we're going to gradually add this in with our dry ingredients. Here I'm using hand mixer. You could definitely mix it by hand if you like. And then real quick, I'm just going to break up the rest of my dry ingredients, make sure the butter is well incorporated, and then we're going to add in those wet ingredients. Now, depending on your climate and how much moisture is in your air, you may need to add a little more 1/2 and 1/2. So you'll see here as we get into the mixing process, my dough is a little on the dry side, so I'm just going to add about 1 tablespoon of 1/2 and 1/2 at a time. And you want this to come together really well, but you don't want like a overly wet batter because that's going to defeat the purpose of that flaky, beautiful, traditional scone batter. So once everything is starting to come together, we're going to turn this out onto a clean work surface, and we're going to flour our work surface with more of your gluten-free flour, or you can use tapioca starch, works really well. And then here is the flour if you guys are interested. I love this flour for all of my baking essentials. So with a well-floured surface, we're going to just turn our dough over and gently just begin working it. And essentially you're going to want this just to slightly hold together. We don't want it too wet and we don't want it dry and crumbly. We want it to just be able to come together and not crumble apart anymore. So I'm going to just gradually add about 1 tablespoon of 1/2 and 1/2. And I do really recommend 1/2 and 1/2. You really need the richness of the 1/2 and 1/2 to just hold everything together. And then you also need 1/2 and 1/2 to glaze your scones right before they go into the oven. And that gives it that beautiful shine that you are accustomed to seeing with traditional scones. So here we're just going to work this, and you can shape this dough into whatever shape you like. I'm just doing about a 9-inch round shape and about an inch to 1.5 inches thick. You could also do it into a square, whatever shape your heart desires. So here we are getting everything nice and formed. And again, just add a little bit of half and half as needed, making sure to get all of the dough well incorporated, and then just kind of turn it out, working it with your hands. This is the fun part, honestly. So I'm going to just now shape it into my circular shape, about, again, 8 to 9 inches, depending on how small or large you want your slices of scone. So from here, I'm going to gently transfer this to a lined baking sheet with parchment paper. And then we are going to cut our scone into the sizes and shapes that you'd like. I'm doing, I believe I did you could do 6 to 8 triangles. You could do this with a knife or a bench scraper, whichever you prefer. And then one step that I really recommend that not a lot of recipes call for is to freeze your scones at this point. After you have cut them into shapes, you're going to put them in the freezer. And what this does is it, one, allows your dough to hydrate, which is really important with gluten-free baking. And two, it's also going to ensure more even baking, and then that the butter just melts and creates that beautiful flaky dough when it's baking. So we're going to set this in the freezer for about 20 to 30 minutes to let it set, and then we're going to work on our glaze in the meantime. So here I have half a cup of powdered sugar, and I'm doing about half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon and about 1/8 of a teaspoon of pumpkin spice and a little splash of vanilla. And then I also put 3 teaspoons of the half and half in there as well. And you're just going to mix this up until you get the nice consistency of a glaze, and then make sure you taste it just to make sure it's to your liking. And that's that for the glaze. So next we're going to grab a couple more tablespoons of our half and half, and we're going to baste all of our scones that have already been setting in the freezer. And what this does is creates that beautiful shine when the scones are done baking. So you can use regular milk if you like, but the fat in the half and half is what is going to give it that beautiful golden color. So here we are. I baked them in the oven at 425 degrees, and you're going to bake them for roughly about 15 minutes, give or take, depending on your oven, how high the heat is, how quick your oven is. I have an older oven, so about 14 to 16 minutes, I would say. So once your scones are done baking, you're going to let them cool completely and then glaze them with that beautiful pumpkin glaze that we made earlier. And that's it, guys. It's really that simple. This is such a phenomenal recipe. I highly recommend you try it out and impress all of your guests, or just eat them all yourself, whichever. Totally up to you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.